Hello people, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be dropping some knowledge on you. Today we're going to be talking about how I quit drinking in college practically on my own. As most of you know, I am a senior in college. I'm 22. I quit drinking just 6 months after I turned 21. Getting sober while living in a college town where I'm surrounded by people who binge drink all the time has been a wild ride. If you haven't seen my video on why I quit drinking and why I needed to quit drinking, I'll link that down below and up here somewhere. Basically, when I first was getting help for my drinking, my intention and my goal was never to completely quit. It was just to moderate and learn how I can drink under control like a lot of my friends. But that obviously did not work, so I made the decision to quit drinking altogether. Living in a college town surrounded by people who binge drink and just living in a society where alcohol is kind of put on a pedestal, it's been very hard to get sober and then maintain my sobriety, but I have done it. I'm just over 8 months sober today, so I think I mean this is still the beginning stages, but I think I have a pretty good handle on it so far. I have developed some tips for you if you are looking to quit drinking altogether or even to just cut back on your drinking and drink less. These tips might help you as well. I think, you know, the college drinking culture it's very centered around drinking, but life is also just centered around drinking and our society is centered around drinking. So I think these tips will be helpful for anyone. All these tips I've just gathered throughout my journey from research or experiencing them myself or talking to other sober people. If you're interested in learning how to cut back or quit drinking altogether on your own, keep on watching. Quick disclaimer that these tips may not work for everyone. They worked for me, but obviously they may not work for everyone. So take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt, try it out on your own. So without further ado, let's get right into it. I have my notebook here, so if I'm looking over there, that is why. Tip number 1 is to identify your why. Why do you want to quit drinking? Why do you want to cut back on drinking? This is something that you're going to be able to refer back to and you're going to need to refer back to throughout your entire journey. There are times when I think about, oh, maybe I can just have one drink, or why am I doing this? This is so pointless. I feel so left out. And in those times, that's when it's important to remember your why. My why is I needed to quit drinking because it was basically ruining my life. It was ruining my mental health. It was ruining my friendships, my relationships with others. And so when I think, you know, maybe I can just have that one drink, I always think back to why I started and why I'm doing this. And it helps me get over that urge to drink. Tip number 2 is to decide that there is no better time than now. I am serious about this. I put off drinking for so many months because I never thought it was the right time. You know, I was a junior in college. I'm now a senior in college, but back then I was a junior in college when I was first thinking about quitting drinking, and that is like prime college time, you know, prime drinking time, and I was not ready to give that up. But then I saw this quote on Pinterest and it said, if you keep waiting for the right time, you'll be waiting for the rest of your life. And that is so true. You know, binge drinking and drinking in general does not end when college ends. There's always going to be that other party. There's always going to be that other event that you want to go to, that you want to drink at. And so you need to realize that the right time is now. There's no better time to take care of yourself and to take care of your mental health than right now. I remember when I was first trying to quit, it was one of my friend's 21st birthdays, like the next week, and I was like, okay, I'll wait till after that to quit drinking because I wanted to drink at that. But if you think about it, you could always come up with something else that you want to drink at, and you're gonna always keep pushing off quitting drinking because there's always gonna be another event. So once you decide that the right time is right now, it's gonna help you so much to get over that fear and start the journey. Tip number 3 is to identify what you're afraid of. I put off drinking for so long because I was afraid of so many things. I was so afraid of being judged for my decision and for being judged that I didn't drink, when in reality I've come to find out that your true friends are going to not judge you and they're going to support you no matter what. And I've also come to learn that the people that do judge you and they do judge your decision and are like, why are you doing that? Chances are they themselves are insecure about their own drinking issues. You know, It's always those people that are pressuring others to drink at the party or need people to drink with them. Those are the people that are so insecure about their own drinking habits. That was me, you know. I always wanted to pressure people to drink more at parties so they could get just on my level, and that's because I was so insecure about the way I was drinking. So just know that if people do judge you, it's mainly a reflection of them and nothing about you. Another thing I was afraid of was my social life changing. I was afraid that I wasn't going to be able to go to all the things that I used to be able to go to. And so for a long time, in the beginning of my sobriety journey, I actually stayed going to all the things that I used to. I still went to bars, still went to parties, and then I quickly realized that that was just too tempting and too hard of a situation to be in my very early stages of sobriety. So I stopped going, and that was hard because I did have major FOMO, but I realized that that was what was right for me in the moment. I used to not be able to literally get excited about any event or anything that didn't involve alcohol, so it was really hard for me to find new activities and new social things that were fun. But I promise you it will happen. It just takes a little bit of time to learn what is fun and what your new social life is going to be like. You're going to learn to attend the things that you actually want to go to and that are actually fun for your core being, and they're not just fun because you're fucked up, you know? Another thing I was afraid of was the fear of failure. I was afraid that I would not be able to do it, that I would not be able to quit drinking, and I failed many, many times. But my therapist told me that failure is just part of the journey. It really did. It took me 6 months from admitting that I had a problem and getting help for it and saying that I was gonna quit drinking. It took me 6 months from that point to actually do it. So it's a long journey, it's a process, and just know that failure is part of the journey, but one day it will stick for you and it will be worth it. Tip number 4 is from one of my favorite quitting alcohol books. It's called This Naked Mind by Annie Grace. I'll link it in the description. I've talked about it on my blog, on my Instagram, even on this YouTube channel. But basically she says, instead of thinking of quitting drinking as this huge lifestyle change that you're about to make, think of it as an experiment. Try going 1 day sober. Try going 1 week sober, 1 month. Try going to one event sober that you would normally drink at. If you think of it more as an experiment and that you're just trying it, it's less daunting than, oh my god, I can't drink for the rest of my life. Another thing that was helpful was to think about, like, what's the worst that could happen if you do try versus if you don't try. If you go to one event sober, the worst thing that could happen if you do try is it's awkward and you need to leave early. Whereas for me, the worst thing that could happen if I didn't try was I would most likely black out and then wake up shameful and be in that shame and anxiety cycle and harm my mental health. If you get through that one event sober, then that is a win in itself. Which brings me to my next point. Tip number 5, I think is 5. Tip number 5 is to get a counting app. This has been so helpful for me. There's a lot of different sobriety counting apps out there, but I use the one I Am Sober, and I really like it because you can track anything that you want to be sober from. So I have coffee and alcohol. Coffee just because it upsets my stomach. But the main thing that I obviously track on here is alcohol, so you can put that in and then it tells you how long you've been sober for. There's a place where you can pledge. I have not pledged obviously in a while. I used to use this a lot when I was very, very early in my sobriety. There's a place where you can put your, like, why I stay alcohol free. There's a place for motivation, and then at the end of the day you can even track how you felt that day. So this app has honestly saved me from drinking so many times because I didn't want to break this streak. You know, I knew that if I drank, I'd have to set this app back to 0, and that in itself was really hard. In addition to dealing with the guilt of drinking, I just really didn't want to set this back to 0. So having this app as like an accountability partner thing was actually really helpful to me. Tip number 6 is to find that accountability partner, find that one supporter. I know that this video is kind of about how to quit drinking on your own, but I think it's really important to have at least one person that you can reach out to when you're feeling just overwhelmed with everything and you're having these thoughts and having these feelings. This can be a family member, this can be a friend, a boyfriend, a counselor like I had. They may not necessarily have to understand what you're going through, but just having one person to reach out to, maybe if you're having a craving to drink, and just say, hey, I'm having this craving, can you just talk to me for a little? That's so helpful. people instead of just keeping it a secret and keeping it bottled up inside. That drove me crazy for so long, let me tell you. I'm in this group called Club RPG, stands for Retired Party Girl, but anyone can join it, girls or guys, or whatever you identify as. We have Zoom meetings every Sunday night and we check in, and there's just different events that we can go to, and I swear the amount of times that I've gone into one of these Zoom meetings feeling like crazy stress and major anxiety, and then by the time I leave the Zoom meeting after talking to all these sober women, it is like a weight is lifted off my shoulders, and they're just so supportive. That club is $10 a month, I think. I'll link it down below, but I'm sure there's other free clubs you can join, but if you want to be a part of it with me, you can. Tip number 7, I think we're on number 7, is to find hobbies that replace your drinking. If you were like me and every single thing you did for fun involved drinking, then you're gonna have a lot of free time on your hands when you finally decide to quit or cut back. And if you don't fill this free time with a hobby, you're going to be sitting in your room on a Friday night alone watching Snapchat stories of people going out and drinking, and you're gonna have major FOMO and you're gonna be thinking, what is all this for? I'm speaking from personal experience, so it's very important to fill the time that you're usually spending drinking, fill it with something else. Right now, like I said, I love to blog, I love to read, I love to go on hikes with my friends, watch movies with my friends, I love to cook. You're not gonna know exactly what your hobbies are right at the beginning. It's going to take time for you to figure out what exactly you like to do, but it's going to be worth it, and it's going to be so fun when you finally figure it out. Tip number 8 is to find some alcohol-free drinks that you really enjoy. I noticed that when I was in early sobriety, and even now having like a craving to drink, I don't get cravings as much anymore, but when I did, when I first quit drinking, it was so helpful to have a sugary, bubbly drink on hand that I really liked that didn't have alcohol to satisfy that craving. So some of my favorites now are Better Booch. Lauren Elizabeth has put me on to the ginger boost flavor, and I am in love with that. I also really like Olipop. Those are really good prebiotic sodas type of things. Tea. I have literally drinking more tea these past 8 months than I have in my entire life. And the last tip that I have for you guys today is to know your resources. If someone tells you that this book changed their life, like if I said This Naked Mind, it changed my life and it changed my attitude towards alcohol, but that doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to work for you. So I encourage you to not get discouraged if a resource that worked for one person doesn't work for you. You need to spend time figuring out the resources that are going to help you the most. Speaking of resources, I will link my resources page down below, but it has a whole list of the Quit Lit books. I haven't read all of them. I read, I think, 2 or 3. I have a ton of books on there. I have a couple of sober podcasts on there that I like. Club RPG is on there, some websites, and there's even some hotlines for you if you want. So go ahead and check that out. But just absorbing yourself in learning about sobriety and learning about cutting back on alcohol and just learning about alcohol in general, I think really helped me maintain my motivation to stay sober, and just learning about how it affects our bodies and how it affects our society. That is all the tips that I have for you guys. One thing that I did want to mention that was brought up to me a couple days ago, and I think it's so important to talk about, is you do not have to tell anyone what you're going through. You do not have to explain to them why you're doing it. You do not owe anyone an explanation for what you're doing. I personally needed to come out on my Instagram as sober to all my followers because it was kind of part of my healing process and helped me in my recovery. But if you don't want to do that, if you don't feel comfortable telling everyone, if you just want to tell a couple friends, then you do you. I may be forgetting some tips, but I think that's all I have so far. As always, if you want to maintain your sobriety motivation, if you want even more tips on how to quit drinking or how to cut back on drinking, or just wellness and lifestyle and motivation tips in general, be sure to follow me on Instagram because I post on there very actively about how I'm feeling and how I'm able to stay motivated and other sobriety tips that I pick up along the way. If you guys have any questions, feel free to comment them down below. Any other video ideas or things that you want to see, comment those down below as well. Thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I will see you in the next video.